and welcome to Paranormal Chronicles. I'm your host, Joe Miranda. Today's episode is Canary in a Coal Mine. Buckle up, folks, because today we have a very interesting episode to unpack. But before we go any further, I just want to make it very clear that I'm a flawed man and I'm a sinner. I give God all the glory, and I believe Jesus Christ is my Savior, and I renounce Satan. However, I will never, ever underestimate his ability to blind minds, eyes, ears, and hearts here on earth. Now, this may come as a surprise, but I've written 4 screenplays. Now, I know I'm not Hollywood royalty, but the grind of the blank page, it's an addiction. And there's a quiet magic in turning that emptiness into a story. First screenplay that I wrote, Double Vision. An action thriller. I wrote it in 1991. Next was Walking Among Us, Judgment Day, a spiritual thriller. It was completed on April 6th, 2012. Then there was Isaiah 52, another spiritual thriller. Final edits were completed on November 15th, 2015. And last but not least, Just Beneath Us, a sci-fi thriller about aliens, which I finished on December 16th, 2018. Quite honestly, I have no idea what compelled me to write that one. I know for the past week or so, President Trump and former President Obama have been talking a lot about aliens and UFOs. We'll have to see if they're sincere about releasing any substantial information or anything of substance, or if it's just another psyop designed to distract from the Epstein files. Time will tell. Robert Hirsch, the director of the motion picture and television division in Las Vegas, is the one who encouraged me to write my first screenplay, which was Double Vision. I met Bob through work, and over the course of, I'd say, around 6 years and countless conversations, he convinced me to try my hand at script writing. The timing was actually perfect because it coincided with a screenplay contest that was being sponsored by his office. And the winner would have their submission turned into a full-length motion picture. The only caveat was that the story had to be set and filmed in Las Vegas. I eventually settled on writing an action thriller, which turned out to be Double Vision. I think a romantic comedy may have won the contest. They were kind of gaining traction back then. Bob wasn't on the judging panel, but he did read my script for me. And he thought it was quite written, and he encouraged me to continue writing. Shortly afterwards, in early 1992, I met Steve Allender. Steve served in the Marine Corps and was your prototypical New Yorker. Picture Rodney Dangerfield with an omnipresent toothpick hanging out of his mouth. And that was Steve to a T. As the manager of engineering at Hewlett-Packard in the late 60s and early 70s, Steve played a crucial role in the computer maker's initial success. And if you Google his name to this day, you will still find stories about him during his time there. Pretty funny. I went back and read some of them, and the gentleman who wrote it, he nailed it. Quintessential Steve in that article he wrote. Now, Steve gave no quarter, and he asked for none. And he was passionate about everything he did. And you couldn't help but love the guy for it. We both shared a real appreciation for music of the 60s and the 70s, and we became fast friends. If Steve Valander liked you, he'd do absolutely anything for you. But you had to get on his good side. It also didn't hurt that my ex-wife baked an amazing New York-style cheesecake. Steve loved that. When she would make a cheesecake, his eyes would light up. Has anyone out there watching this video ever come that close to your dream? Now, it happened to me twice. Because of his position at Hewlett-Packard, Steve moved in high circles. Steve had pull everywhere, and I mean everywhere. At some point, I gave Steve a mixtape of some music that I had recorded back in the 80s. He played the tape for one of his female friends from Japan who just happened to be a music producer over there. And at that time, in the early 90s, Japan was on fire for American music talent. Long story short, she offered my music partner and I, a 3-month contract to go over there to play the music circuit over in Japan, see if we liked it. Fortunately, my partner turned down the opportunity. It happens. Early on, I did mention to Steve that I had written a script, and him being the consummate mover and shaker, he asked to read it. Steve liked it so much that he actually fronted me the money to get the script scanned and then loaded up onto a floppy disk. He then gifted me an HP Vectra desktop computer so I could work on the final edits. If you're wondering, the first draft was created on a typewriter. That was a real treat because I'm not much of a typist. After the editing was completed, Steve got us a meeting with the CEO of Warner Brothers, Bob Daly. Fortunately, 2 weeks before our meeting with Warner Brothers, Steve died of a massive heart attack. To this day, I remember getting that phone call from his son. Steve was just 57 years old when he passed away. And his passing left a huge void in my life, and I still miss him to this day. What I didn't know at the time, and is crystal clear to me now, is that the scripts I've written, or as I like to say, scribed, because that's what I believe I do, that's it, were never meant to become movies. As my friend Steve Perry aptly put it, they were meant to be a timestamp, and I couldn't agree more. And I believe, courtesy of the watchers, I'm going to share excerpts from each script to validate what I'm saying, starting with Double Vision. Just keep in mind that this script was written back in 1991. The plot focuses on a shadow network working within the government. There are two main antagonists. The first is Chip Barker, the former Harvard Law School roommate of Arkansas Senator Jim Burns. Burns is killed in the opening scene and is replaced by a surgically modified Barker who acts as his body double, hence the name Double Vision. And Malcolm, a global terrorist who in the script masterminded the bombing of the World Trade Center. Excerpt from the script. Malcolm, probably the most brilliant of all known terrorists, graduated from UCLA with a master's degree in chemical engineering. He was affiliated with the likes of Gaddafi, Arafat, and even Saddam Hussein. Class, you're looking at the man who masterminded the bombing of the World Trade Center. Continues. Over a 25-year period, the United States government had depositions implicating Malcolm in more than 70 incidences abroad. Now, Osama bin Laden founded al-Qaeda in 1988, and he was linked to dozens of incidents abroad. Bin Laden was active for 23 years until he was killed by U.S. Special Forces in 2011. Excerpt. Back to the present. Tony walks along the roadside. Something offstage catches his attention. He takes several steps into the desert. An object on the ground is reflecting the sun's light. He kneels down and picks up a class ring. The ring has Harvard Law School engraved on it. He pockets the ring and walks back toward the Bronco. Former President Obama attended Harvard Law School. Excerpt from the script. Newscaster. In a surprise move, Democrats have decided to kick off the 1996 campaign trail in Las Vegas with their choice for Vice President, Senator Jim Burns of Arkansas. The excerpt continues. The key topics the two candidates will focus on are healthcare reform, global economics, and gun control issues. Obamacare was passed March 23rd, 2010. And the former president was also a major advocate for gun control. The next is an excerpt from the script's protagonist, Tony Boyd. What did you know about Senator Jim Burns? This is an excerpt for the gal he's talking to, the main character, the main female character in the script. She says, "Not much. Up until a few months ago, I didn't even know he existed." Then candidate Barack Obama was a U.S. senator for less than 4 years, who basically came out of nowhere to win the Democratic presidential nomination in 2008. Before 2008, most people had never heard of Barack Obama. No, I never had. This is an excerpt from one of the supporting characters in the script. You know how those sorry asses at the Treasury Department have been trying to figure out what happened to the $1.5 trillion that dropped out of circulation. In 2023, Senator Rick Scott accused Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell of losing $8 trillion. The excerpt continues. Well, I have a pretty good idea where $960 million of it is. That specific excerpt is in reference to major gang organizations from around the country being funded by a shadow government. That sounds an awful lot like the deep state to me today. It's also ironic that in 2025, Doge exposed billions in taxpayer waste, fraud, and abuse, and billions more lost and unaccounted for. Excerpt. President of the United States. Someone just blew up the hotel with Reverend Rafer Williams and his people were staying at. In the script, a prominent black religious leader is murdered, which leads to rioting in 15 major U.S. cities. I want to point out the unrest in Ferguson in 2014 led to protests in 170 U.S. cities. And in 2012, we had the George Floyd riots. Excerpt from the Las Vegas Strip shooting scene. Exterior, Old Las Vegas Strip, night. A van pulls up and a group of gang members gets out. They are armed and start firing at the crowd. One member lights a homemade gasoline bomb and throws it into a casino. Now, for context, during the October 1st, 2017 Route 91 Harvest terrorist attack, and I'm calling it a terrorist attack, on the Las Vegas Strip, there were two massive jet fuel tanks across from that venue on McCarran Airport property that were being shot at. The excerpt continues. A Metro police car pulls up and the officers are shot dead in their vehicles. The gang members split up and start running down the street, firing at anything that moves. Charleston Hartfield, a Las Vegas Metro officer, was shot and killed while attending the Route 91 Harvest concert. And this is an excerpt from one of the supporting characters. They're the ones that control the money and make the decisions that determine what the standard of living in this country will be. Now, the only way they can make this thing work is to have global equity. In essence, a one world government that would be run by elitists who would know what's best for you and me. They want to control you from cradle to grave. They'll give you socialized health care, teach your children about alternative lifestyles, and when you get old, they'll decide when it's too expensive to keep you alive. I want to point out again that this script was written in 1991. Now, on a lighter note, the key female character in the script is a beautiful blonde-haired woman named Kelly. Just so happens that I have had a nearly 25-year friendship with a beautiful blonde-haired woman named Kelly. We met in 2001, 10 years after the script was written. Around 2008, I told Craig Perry that I had become obsessed with the idea to write a script about Jesus Christ coming back to earth. That obsession would become Walking Among Us Judgment Day. The screenplay is structured around Jesus walking the earth, enacting God's vengeance against evildoers. In the screenplay, his travels take him around the globe. Excerpt. Jack has another vision. Jack is the protagonist in the script. Following excerpt is what Jack sees in his vision. Cut 2. The hydraulic pump continues to spray hydraulic fluid off the wing of the aircraft. Interior, airliner cockpit, pilots, air traffic controller voiceover. Be advised, Southwest Flight 223. A British Airway pilot reported a flock of geese flying within the airport boundaries 3 minutes ago. Cut 2. One of the geese slam into the wing, and another is sucked into the engine. Should say one goose slams into the wing, and another is sucked into the engine. There's a bang, and the aircraft starts to roll to the left. The aircraft engine winds down as it loses power. Cut 2. Warning systems and alarms are going off in the cockpit. The captain struggles with the yoke to try and regain control of the aircraft. Co-pilot. We've lost engine 1. Engine 1, just for the record, is almost always the left engine on an airliner. Now keep that in mind. The excerpt continues. Captain struggling. I'm losing the aircraft. The co-pilot grabs his yoke and tries to help. This is an excerpt from several scenes later. Interior convenience store. Jack and Jessica approach the checkout counter with their coffees. The cashier and several patrons are transfixed on the wall-mounted television. The caption at the bottom of the television reads, "Airliner crashes near Baltimore, Washington International Airport. No survivors." Now, regarding the November 4th, 2025 UPS plane crash in Louisville, Kentucky, there's an NTSB preliminary report. And it's indicated that UPS Flight 2976 crashed after takeoff when its left engine number 1, separated from the wing. Same as in the script. In Walking Among Us, the protagonist Jack has a premonition about a plane crash, just like I did on October 29th, 2025. Excerpt is from the same script. Exterior gated community, Senator Rosenthal's home. Security vehicle, night. January 16th, 2014. A man walks up on the sidewalk in an upscale neighborhood and past the posh home of Nevada State Senator Reed Rosenthal. The man is dressed in baggy khaki shorts, a East Stroudsburg University sweatshirt, and sandals. The man has a somewhat disheveled look. Now, 1 year and 14 days later, this happened to Senator Harry Reid. This is out of Wikipedia. On January 1st, 2015, Nevada Senator Harry Reid was injured while exercising in his home. He said a piece of equipment he was using broke down, causing him to fall. As a result, he suffered broken ribs, broken facial bones, and was at risk of permanent vision loss in his right eye. On January 26, 2015, he underwent surgery to remove a blood clot from his right eye and repair facial bones. Now, there are still several conspiracies floating around that Senator Harry Reid wasn't injured in a random gym accident. there was something afoot. It should also be noted that Senator Reid never ran for public office again. I believe he passed away in 2021, if I'm correct. And actually, McCarran International Airport in Las Vegas was renamed Harry Reid Airport. The following excerpt is from the first scene set in Ukraine about a prolific serial killer. Again, this is an excerpt from Walking Among Us. Exterior. Yablokno Village, Sumy District, Ukraine. Night. A lone man walks along a dark, deserted country road toward a farmhouse. Interior. Farmhouse. Basement. Yablokno Village. Now, for the record, Russian forces invaded Ukraine on February 24th, 2022. 7 days after the invasion of Ukraine, Russian troops entered the village of Yahidny, also known as Yablokno Village, the same village as in the script that was written and finished before this event took place. After the invasion, soldiers forced the residents out of their homes and into the basement of the local school. In the script, the serial killer had a secret torture room in the basement of his home. Now, the Russians kept the residents in that basement of the school until they withdrew on March 30th, 2022. To date, 200,000 Ukrainian civilians and soldiers and 325,000 Russian soldiers have been killed in the war. I think it's also curious that officials from Russia, officials from the Russian government have labeled Ukrainian President Zelensky a mass murderer. Some people call it propaganda. Some people say this guy, Zelensky's pure evil. Now, the number 52 has played a significant role in my life since 2012 and has been mentioned 121 times in my journal. I recently discovered that the serial killer I modeled in the Ukrainian scenes, or the Ukraine scenes, Anatoly Onoprienko, murdered 52 people. It should also be noted, Psalms 52 emphasizes God's judgment against the wicked, and that will lead to their eventual downfall, which is the central theme of the script. Walking Among Us Judgment Day was finished on April 6, 2012. My mother passed away on April 6, 2012. Affirmations such as that can only come from God. And I can tell you, you never start to write a movie script or a screenplay, whatever you want to call it, and say, well, I'm going to finish on this date. It doesn't work like that. A writer can get writer's block, can have, life events come up. The fact that I finished that script on that day and at 2:00 in the morning, which on the morning that my mother passed away at 2:00 in the morning is when I had that medical event with my blood pressure and my heart rate. blows my mind. Now, the truth is that Craig Perry was the driving force behind my writing Isaiah 52. We were talking on the phone back in the fall of 2012, and he told me, I'm thinking trilogy, Joe. In fact, that's a term we throw around all the time. It's a inside joke between us, implying that I should write a third script. I told him I didn't know if I had another script in me. I had just finished writing Walking Among Us Judgment Day 6 months earlier, and quite frankly, I was burnt out on writing. But Craig kept pressing, and he eventually talked me into it. Through the divine grace, and I believe the guiding hand of Craig's grandfather, Alfred Young, the project came together. And on November 15th, 2015, after 18 months of scribing and a cross-country move later, the script was in the can. Now, the similarities between what's transcribed or what's transpired over the past 10 years and the content in the script is absolutely mind-numbing. I'm going to share a few of the excerpts. You can't trust anyone these days. Not when we have a government that can imprison us for offensive speech and perceived acts of intolerance. Now that sounds an awful lot like the UK these days. They are arresting people for what is deemed hate speech. Mind you, our Constitution comes from the English Magna Carta of 1215. What has happened to that country is unbelievable. Excerpt. Superimpose Spring Valley, Washington, D.C., September 1st, 2020. Exterior, Washington, D.C. suburbs of Spring Valley. Dawn. Sunlight begins to sneak over the horizon as dawn approaches. Just the other week, FBI Director Kash Patel turned over a long secret memo to Congress. Listen to this. A September 2020 FBI intelligence report, the same date that is on that script. A September 2020 FBI intelligence report says the FBI conducted a tabletop exercise in the summer of 2020 that imagined what sort of violence might ensue in a contested 2020 presidential election. The watchers knew something was going on during that time. Mind you, that script was finished November 15th, 2015. So basically what that secret memo shows is that the powers to be, the deep state, whatever you want to call them, planned for there to be a disputed 2020 election. And the FBI knew all about it. Well, it looks like the watchers did too. Excerpt. Senator Carson walks over to the wall where the posters from some of Hank's previous TV episodes are hanging. Hank was, I believe he was a newscaster / editor at one of the main media outlets of the time. I'm going to go over some of the titles from 2015 that I wrote in were hanging on his walls. The undeniable truth that there is no God. Christianity, a religion of hate and hypocrisy. New World Order advocates. Why borders must go. Wow. That's interesting. In fact, I believe it was the Prime Minister of Canada just not so long ago was talking about the New World Order when he was over in Davos. One Muslim man's crusade. The government must crack down on critics of Islam. And the gun violence epidemic and how it impacts the Second Amendment argument. Well, we know the powers that be are always trying to take our Second Amendment rights from us. Now, I don't know what to say about that in Isaiah 52. Other than the watchers are light years ahead of us. Excerpt, again, from Isaiah 52. Superimposed the joint Russian-Chinese alliance industrial complex. Surrogate City, formerly Napa City, California. West Coast Province. July 7th, 2036. Exterior. Industrial complex, daytime. The massive complex is nestled amid the rolling hills of the former Napa Valley. The industrial complex consists of several dozen factories and foundries, along with a handful of stone quarries and silver mines. Renee, who was one of the main characters in the second thrust of the screenplay. Renee, voiceover. The U.S. occupation began 6 months after England and the European Union fell to China and Russia. The unified Islamic State, a radical Muslim faction brimming with oil money and influence, agreed to join the Russians and the Chinese in their quest for world domination. After conquering the Middle East and Africa, they set their sights on the United States. While the U.S. was still reeling from a series of devastating cyber attacks by China, Russia finished them off by unleashing an airborne version of the Ebola virus that killed 40 million people in less than 3 months. In return for its unconditional surrender, the United States was given the antidote to stop the spread of the deadly disease. Sounds a lot like the 2020 COVID pandemic. Now, here's something that's even scarier. Knowing that the watchers, have been out there, at least communicating to me for a while, are China, Russia, and an Islamic extremist group planning to unleash another biological attack on the U.S. in the not-so-distant future. Well, I ask that, and I pray to God not, but I don't know. Evil is rampant right now. Now, it's my contention that the watchers have been sharing insights into the future through the screenplays that I've scribed over the past 35 years. And it continues with these podcasts. And I think it should serve as a massive red flag for our country. And if in the final timeline of the events, as depicted in Isaiah 52, come to fruition, we may very well be a conquered people. Less than 10 years. Chew on that for a hot minute.